Thank you. Okay, so today we're going to talk about networking and why this is so important and some ways we go about doing that even while we're in college. This is not something that we can wait to do until the professional world, even though it is probably going to be vital to you in the professional world as you grow and advance and get promoted and develop new things in the professional world. So we want to talk about why this is so important and really why we've got to start practicing these kind of skills right now while we're a student at Gardner Webb. We can't wait. And the truth is, you've probably already been networking. If I asked you all to share how you've done that, if you think about even back to those early days of preschool or early school days, you were building relationships with people. You were doing those things that look like networking, even though you probably didn't call it that. You were deciding who you found a connection with and who you were sort of attracted to or had similar interests. And then those people that you might have avoided or decided not to develop a deeper sense of relationship with because you didn't have those connections. But why is this so important for the professional world? Why would we need to worry about a network of people? What do we do with those people? How do we build those relationships? Why is this such a big deal? Why bother with it? Well, first of all, in the work world, you can't do your work alone. Even the most remote park ranger in Alaska has a team of people they're working with. And so oftentimes those other people that may be outside of our work environment, they may be colleagues in another company or a competitor or people that we know of in a particular field. They have the resources, the ideas, the answers, the people even that we need to be connected to. And we don't know that until we develop those relationships with them and stay in good communication with them. So, I mean, obviously for your work, you need those relationships, but they need those relationships just like you do. They can't do this by themselves either. This is a two-way street, mutually beneficial. And so we're going to talk some about that today too. But here's a big reason. You're going to need to network to find a job. Some of you are going to need to network to find an internship. Most of our Gardner Webb alum in recent times found their first out of the university job opportunity, so that entry level work they start after they graduate, through a relationship with someone else. They didn't find it on LinkedIn, or at least not through the job search tool. They didn't find it on some website somewhere. It was because someone else shared with them, hey, we have an opportunity and we thought of you, because they had developed that relationship. And this is really important because there are so many jobs out there that never make it to the search engine, that never make it to the internet, that never make it to a jobs board. So right now, about 70% of those jobs are never posted publicly. And if you think about all the millions of jobs that are listed right now out on Glassdoor, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, LinkedIn, all those things, there's still a ton, way more. 70% of the jobs in the world are never posted publicly. So you want to figure out, how do I tap into that market? And again, it's through relationships. It's who you know and who thinks of you when that opportunity arises, who shares that with you. So we want to think about how we develop relationships that are mutually beneficial. And so this idea of networking can seem a little one-sided at times, because I'm going to talk to you about it in the sense that you need to develop some personal goals for your networking, some things that you need to be trying to achieve through networking. But again, this is a lifelong process. So it starts now. You should start it right now, today. Make today the goal of, hey, it started today. And this goes for the rest of your life. You want to be building these strategic, mutually beneficial professional relationships that further your career goals. But because they're mutually beneficial, they also further the career goals of those people you're building the relationships with. And I find in talking to a lot of our college students here, there's some natural barriers that are not bad things, but they're speed bumps. They're not brick walls. They're things we can overcome, some minor hurdles to really start to be engaged in this process, to make it a habit, to practice that while we're here, so we carry that behavior out of the university and into the professional world. And one of the biggest barriers is just our mindset. We're not thinking about it. We didn't know about it, or we didn't know that it was so important, or we didn't understand how we were supposed to go about doing those things. We're going to start reversing that mindset and transforming that today. Some of us, we're just not comfortable with this. We're more of we're the less social butterfly. We're not the loudest voice in the room. We're kind of shy, and maybe we think of the idea of networking as a lot of interactive relationship building that we find draining. And it can be that way. But for some of us, we're going to have to develop around that and go out of our comfort zone. And for some of us, we also realize that that's a little mythical, that it doesn't have to be draining if we, have some strategy around it that can help us do that. And that's the other big barrier we see too, that you just don't have a plan. There's not a strategy for how to do this. No one's taught me how to do this. And I don't know how to plan for developing these relationships or to make time for it. A lot of times we're reactive. Somebody pulls us into a relationship and then we become part of that rather than being proactive and seeking that on our own. And a lot of us, and I see this very common with folks who are new to this, but I also see it with people that have been in the work world for 20 plus years. they have a poor follow-up. They meet people, but they really don't do a good job of developing a relationship with that person to find that mutual benefit and to be there in that network in a way that is beneficial to both parties. They don't follow up to develop a relationship beyond a certain point. And so we want to be consistent with that. And we want to learn to do this and be consistent with it in our work world, but also before we leave the university, some of the best networking we can do to get us launched into that work world happens here. So how do we network? Well, let's talk about it in sort of three different time frames. The before part, so that practice, planning, preparation phase of developing a strategy for how we're going to network, and then how we execute that strategy, what we actually do during the process of networking. And there's different environments for that where there's different behaviors that'll dictate. And then the follow-up piece. You're not going to have relationships if you don't follow up. Relationships are not greetings. They're not meetings. They're a long-term process where you get to know someone at a deeper level and find out that mutual benefit. So we want to talk about these three phrases or phases, and we'll build those in as we go today. So with anything you're doing, obviously we should have some strategy and goals before we go into that. And we're going to talk specifically about the who and the what, because those are really the most important things. Who do I need to connect with because of what I'm trying to accomplish? So you want to clearly identify those goals when you go into networking. So it's common for a lot of students to have the goal of, I need to find an internship. Well, let that be an easy sort of low-hanging fruit networking goal, that I want to network with people that can help me find that internship opportunity. It doesn't necessarily mean that the people you start building those relationships with are the person that will hire you for that internship, but they may be the person connected to those opportunities or that know of those. So that's one goal, but it may be that you need information on a particular career. I had a student recently that wanted to go into sort of a state level or county and state government law enforcement level, and was really interested in that kind of career. So he started networking with some people here at Gardner Webb who teach in the criminal justice program, who connected him with a lot of people all over the state of North Carolina, that he is now going around and having some sort of short and informational interviews with, where he's actually interviewing them to find out about their work and learn more about that field. So he's networking purely for information, but he's also networking because a lot of these folks are in the hiring seat and may have an opportunity at some point, and they go, hey, well, there was this guy that was here from Gardner Webb that we met with a while back, and he's on their radar now because he made that initial interaction with them, and they think, well, he's interested in what we do. Maybe we contact him to see if he'd be interested in this internship opportunity or this job, this position. So again, there's a two-way street here, but there's multiple things that can bloom out of this if we leverage these relationships the right way. So you want to think about your goal and have a clearly defined goal. We'll talk about what some of those common things are, and then who can help you reach that goal through a relationship the most effectively. So here's just some basic things when you think about this. How do we use our network? Well, the obvious one, if you're coming out of the university as a senior, is you use it to find a job. And again, so many Gardner Webb students have done that. Sometimes you need the connection to a particular employer, and it's not that you have that person that you're connecting with initially has the opportunity, but you're in. They're the connector. They're the person that already has the relationship, or they work at the company. They're on the inside in some way and can give you that inside information or that intel you need to move forward in that relationship with another person to get that opportunity. Don't overlook things like needing feedback or advice, or needing some criticism, because again, these are our secret weapons to becoming better as employers or as employees and professionals. But who do you go to for that? Well, if you haven't developed relationships with people who are already in the work world ahead of you, or even think about the professors that are right there in the classroom with you, these are people that can offer you these things. We want to be networking and developing a professional relationship with them so that we can seek out that feedback or advice when we need it. And that can even play into learning a new skill or getting new information. If you're in the sales world, you might need it to find new clients or a new sales strategy. But when someone else needs your help is also a great reason to be in that network, because once you found that other people find you to be beneficial, they're going to share your information with other people. And again, that network continues to grow, and so do your opportunities. So here's just some common networking goals. Obviously, finding a job or an internship. We mentioned advice. Sometimes you just need support. A lot of times in a particular field, you'll have these sort of groups of people that get together regularly to share about their work. You may find this at a conference, or even at an after hours event where they gather and talk about their work and vent about some of the things that are not fun, and celebrate some of the things that they enjoy, and talk about innovation. They offer new ideas. A lot of times we see competition among companies produce some really great networking relationships. And I was recently talking to some folks that work in the mobile phone industry here locally, T-Mobile, Verizon, and Sprint, and they were talking about how competitive they are against each other, but what a camaraderie they have in their field as they share new ideas and new strategies for advancing the work they're doing, and they compete against each other. And that competition, that relationship of competition really drives them to be better professionals. And they share very openly about that. So again, a lot of these are the common reasons you would do those things. But again, it's those relationships that help you produce those outcomes. So if these are goals, like any goals, I always like to remind you that SMART goals, and you probably remember this from your University 111 class, that SMART goals help us figure out, are these the right goals for me right now? And I think some of the things we approach sometimes in our networking as we're a new professional with a lot of zeal for our industry or field are not necessarily attainable. They're not realistic for us right now. So the idea that I'm going to connect with the CEO of Coca-Cola as a student at Gardner-Webb is probably not that realistic, not that attainable right now, nor would it advance my career. And again, you don't necessarily need to go to the top. I tell students all the time when they'll mention something. I had a student recently that emailed Dr. Downs about something and Dr. Downs just forwarded back to me and said, I don't know why the student emailed me. I don't have anything to do with this. He was very nice about it, but again, he's at a different level. And so in our networking, sometimes we try to go to the top and it ruins the chance for future relationships. So we want to make sure that we're doing those things very strategically. And we're going to talk about how we find the right who. So think about who you already know based on the goal you have that could help you. So if it's just to find an internship, well, that first stop should be the faculty advisor you have. One, they've got to approve your internship, but two, they're probably already really connected to people who have had experience in a particular internship that might apply to you. The business school has done a great job of developing these pipelines where if I were currently in an internship and I'm about to graduate or leave that internship this semester, and I knew that Jessica Herndon was looking for that same type of internship, it's easy to have her come in through the network, that relationship we have, and me help her get that spot after me. And so again, thinking about people who you already know that can help with those kind of things, well, other students could definitely help. Faculty could help, those employers could help. So how do I connect with the right who that could help me get the thing I need to accomplish that goal? And that's what we're really asking. So that who could be your professors, it could be your peers. Some of you are going to go back home and do an internship, and I'm just using internships as an example because that's a common sort of first level networking goal. You're going to go back home and do your internship over the summer. Well, then you don't need to be searching for internships here. You need to be searching for internships in your home area or in companies connected to that home area. So who would have those ins for you? Who could offer advice on that? So again, networking here is really important, but don't overlook those relationships you've already established back home that you've been managing and developing for years. How do we sort of move them into the professional relationship side now? And even things like clubs and hobbies and interest groups can generate a lot of networking relationships. The Greenville Cycling Club, I was talking to some professionals at the Greenville Chamber of Commerce not too long ago, and they had talked about the Greenville Cycling Club being this group of people from all these different industries that participate in road bike cycling in the Greenville area that are always connecting with one another professionally, but they gather because they enjoy riding bikes, but then they have all these great professional conversations and relationships out of that. So things like church and anything like that, where there are people gathering on a regular basis around a common interest, all of those are potentials for finding that right who. But again, that who needs to connect back to your goal. And sometimes with trial and error, we realize that this is not the right person. So starting with people like your professors, people in my office, people that work in that field, those are the places to start for the best advice. So let's think about who we can connect with right now. How do we start developing those relationships while we're here in college? Well, we want to connect with those that are ahead of us, those that are beside us, and those that are coming behind us. So those that are ahead of us, obviously our professors well ahead of us in the professional world, people that have already left the university and gone on to work in different professions that you can connect with. And we'll talk about how we can leverage LinkedIn to do some of that. Our alumni association is a great way to connect with Gardner-Webb alum. Alumni hire alumni. Athletes hire athletes. These are very common in the HR world. We see those employment situations. So who's ahead of me? Well, obviously anybody working in the field you're wanting to go into. So one of the easiest ways to develop an initial connection with them is LinkedIn. And then maybe you do that interview approach that I talked about, where you connect with those folks and talk a little bit on a video chat or a phone call about how they got into the work they're doing. That's an easy way to start that professional relationship. So think about those people that are already either doing what you want to do or are so far ahead of you professionally, they can help you connect with those opportunities. Again, your professors are a great starting point for that. But think about connecting with those right beside you. I know some of you, if you're in the classroom, you're looking around and going, this bunch, I'm looking at this Zoom window right now. These people, you're saying connect with these people. Yeah. And they're looking back saying, her, him, connect with him. Yeah. Eventually, you're all going to be professionals. And I know some of you today are thinking, I'm so far from it, or that person over there is so far from it. But you need to think about the fact that this peer group is going to follow you into the work world right alongside of you. And some of you may be sitting next to or looking in the Zoom screen in the eyes of the person that's going to be having the opportunity to interview or hire you one day. And that may be shocking, but again, connecting and networking with those people right beside you at that same level, both here at the university and maybe other people you meet through internships. As you're out there, you connect with other people at other schools, those kind of things. Don't overlook that peer group. Some of you are going to start companies one day with people sitting right there in that classroom with you. A student that interviewed or that interned for us last summer at Wells Fargo in Charlotte, she was in that internship program with 399 other people. It's 400 students total that come from all over the world to Charlotte for that thing. And she met so many different people to network with and found so many great opportunities through her peers. So you don't overlook that group. But then think about those coming behind you. Some of you will be in the hiring seat one day, and you're building a pool of candidates for hire right now through those friendships you have on our campus. Again, you may be entrepreneurial and starting a business with some of those folks, or coming up with a new sales approach or idea, some new experience or service you're selling. But again, don't overlook the fact, especially when you leave the university, that your next hiring pool could be those people following you in that next graduation class. Justin Jenkins, who played basketball here, he's a recruiter in Charlotte now. And he always, just every week nearly, he sends me something he's recruiting for. And he says, let's start with Gardner Webb and see if we can find somebody there. So again, what a great thing for alumni to be doing. He's pulling you out of that dugout to play. He's getting you on the field by being in a talent pool like that. So don't overlook those folks ahead of you, beside you, and behind you. You can start networking with them right now. So how do we do that? What are the channels for making those connections? How do we have those opportunities to build those relationships and to move them forward? We'll talk some about some specific situational things. We're going to talk about how we do it in the online environment. But we want to think about direct and indirect ways. Sometimes we start relationships through another person. We want to talk about the different formats and the different environments or contextual things that affect how we go about these relationships and how far we take them. Okay. Now, some of this you can do yourself. You can generate your own opportunities through those connections that we just talked about, that ahead of you, that beside you, and that behind you. But a lot of times, again, asking people that are ahead of you for help or advice is a great way to start that relationship with them. If you're going into a particular field and you're not sure if you want to go in a different direction, let's say you're an accounting major and you're not sure if you want to do taxes or not, and you haven't had an opportunity to do an internship in the tax world, but you want to talk with somebody in the tax world to find out, that's a great way to start that professional relationship. And you could easily get a connection through your professors here on campus, through an employment event we do here, a networking event, or just through LinkedIn to be able to do that. Also, make sure you're participating in the things that are already happening around you, not just the necessarily professional things that are going on our campus, but things like local church involvement, things like clubs and organizations on campus, events that are taking place that you can participate in that may not be required, that are optional. So for instance, this week there's an internship fair that we're doing. It's on Wednesday. We've been advertising the heck out of this thing. We got almost 60 companies registered for it. We only have 45 students signed up to participate. All of our business majors are required to do internships. So at some point, I would think they would want to participate in this to find that internship. And again, with all these great companies that are out there, we want to make sure that we're connecting with those folks. And even if you're not ready to look for an internship or you don't need that yet, these are employers who are saying, we want to connect with Gardner Webb students. So just getting in that event and meeting some of those folks could be that initial step you take to start a relationship, a professional relationship with somebody who may be an employer or offering you an opportunity one day. It's okay to invite yourself sometimes to participate with other people, be that tag along person with permission, obviously. But if you're invited and can go, this might be the opportunity where that person's using their network to benefit you, and they're pulling you into some new relationships to expand your network. Obviously, there's things that I mentioned, being church involvement, those kind of things, but there's all these gatherings that takes place in the world all the time over different affinity things that we're interested in. I mentioned the job fair things that we do here. Take advantage of these things. Like when a salesperson moves to a new town, they join a church to find a group of clients, people they can start working for those client connections. That's not a bad thing. That's a part of that professional life. Some of you are in professional clubs and organizations through the business school right now, and you're already connected to some opportunities to go to conferences or do some online different meet and greet type events. Use that network, leverage that, start to participate in those things. And we'll talk some more about situational or staged events here in a few minutes. One of the biggest things you can do is really leverage your online presence. And I know you're doing LinkedIn for your class with with Jessica Herndon. And I think that's really important that you're using LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the number one initial first step that anybody needs to be developing when seriously doing some professional networking. So one of the most important things you can do with that is make sure you maximize that online profile. And what I mean by that is when you start your LinkedIn account, they're going to ask you to provide all this information. And it doesn't take long to do it, but you know how it is with anything like that. I mean, it's just like when you initially set up your Facebook account 1,000 years ago, that you started to answer those questions and go, well, I don't need to tell them about this right now. And I don't need to tell them about this right now. Well, with LinkedIn, you really do, because what recruiters do on the backside of LinkedIn, companies, employers pay for a service where they can search for talent on LinkedIn based on your profile. And you want to show up in those talent searches. And if you didn't provide all that information, you won't, because they're searching for key criteria that matches those categories of information that LinkedIn has asked you for. And again, a lot of those are optional when you start that LinkedIn profile, but maxing that out is so important. I mean, I think a lot of times students put so much stock in the picture they put on LinkedIn, that photo, when they haven't even really developed their profile or even put up an accurate resume yet. So we want to make sure that we're doing that well. And again, our office can help you do that. I know you're doing some things in your class. We've got some great online workshops you can watch and participate in for help with that too. But again, this idea that these are initial points of contact. And when you go to LinkedIn, one of the easiest things you can do to start developing that network, connect with me, connect with Shay Mattingly, who works with me here in the Career Center, and then connect with the GW career page on LinkedIn. And once you've connected with us, you see all of our connections. And you've probably figured out that's how LinkedIn works. Once you connect with somebody, you get to see all of their connections if they're public. And when you do that, you can start connecting with all those people. Well, you can search my connection list. Let's say I have 1,200 connections on there. You can search my connection list for people in specific industries. You can search people who have a Gardner Web connection. You can search people who are recruiters, and then you can go and connect with all those folks. In the moment you connect with them, you get access to all those connections. So again, it's layers and layers of relationships that you're initially starting through something like LinkedIn. And again, it's an initial starting point and a great way to follow up. But all these other websites listed here, Glassdoor, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, WebWorks, which is Handshake that we use here at Gardner Web, they all ask you to max out those profiles so that recruiters can find you. So don't overlook that. It's really, really important that you do that. And when you're using these things, there's some easy ways on LinkedIn to create a buzz or sort of get on people's radar. You can follow different industries. You can follow different employers. You can follow different people. And you'll get updates and information when they post things. There's a guy on LinkedIn that does a lot with the future of work called Jacob Morgan. And I follow him, and every morning he publishes some stuff. And I've got people that follow me and know that every morning I put out an article on a particular topic. And again, I don't do that in a way to be boastful or anything. I'm just finding articles that I find interesting about the work I do and publish them out there. But I stay on people's radar that way. And I get a lot of connections through that through LinkedIn because other people see the activity that I've had there. So maybe you start to post about things you've been involved with. Carly Winstead that just did a great summer research project on fast fashion. Multiple people have reshared her stuff on LinkedIn. I saw this week where she put it out there, and multiple people have reshared it because it's such an interesting thing. And it's really getting Carly on the radar of all the people those folks are connected with because it shows up on your feed or you get an alert. Make sure you put LinkedIn on your phone. Use that phone app so you can constantly be, making new connections and following up with folks. I mean, in the professional world, we literally use the messaging feature of LinkedIn as much as we use texting. And so it's a great way to do that. It keeps everything it's got just as much ability as any other sort of messaging tool, but it's really taken over in the professional world that I'm communicating on that LinkedIn Messenger all day long with people. And so again, get to where you use that regularly, check it regularly. If somebody sent you a message, you want to respond in a timely fashion, just like you should be doing with your email. Again, you should be checking your email every single day. That's a professional behavior that will never go away. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. But find ways you can post to LinkedIn, post articles you're interested in, things that are relevant to your field, like other people's posts. You can ask people to endorse you for different things. You can take skills tests on LinkedIn where other people can see that you've been endorsed by LinkedIn to have acquired a certain status level based on your skill set. You can share your work and achievements, and you can also share information about the things you're preparing for career-wise and where you're headed with that. So don't overlook those channels. It's so easy to use that online format, and we'll talk some more about that and how it connects to these specific situations. So in a normal year, when we're not a COVID year, we have some common networking situations that are a part of the professional world that you're going to encounter. And these are not going away. You'll still be able to participate in these at some point, maybe even this spring. And we put them in three categories: organized events, whether you participate in the organization of them or not, but usually someone else did and you were invited to it. strategic interactions, and we'll talk about what those are, and then impromptu situations. And these are probably the three most common umbrella situations where networking can take place. And I'm going to remind you with each of these, we've got to prepare for them in a specific way because each require a different strategy. We want to execute well, and the behaviors in those are similar but a little bit different, and always follow up well afterwards. So planning your connections is up to you. You get to decide how and who you connect with and what your goals are. But this is not hard. And we've probably even seen in TV sitcoms and movies and things over the years where somebody is interested in somebody else and they hang outside of their building waiting for them to come out. Maybe you've done this yourself. And you're waiting for that moment where you've planned, and hopefully that person's going to come out and you can connect with them or speak to them or talk to them in that moment, and they weren't necessarily expecting you there. That's more of an impromptu situation or a strategic interaction. But again, you can plan those moments, but we need to think about what we're trying to do in those moments because they're all different. So what am I trying to communicate? How does this particular connection tie back to a goal? Why am I participating in this organized event or asking someone to have a strategic interaction with me? And the situation, the conditions, the other people present may dictate different types of behaviors on my part. So let's specifically talk about organized events. So these could be things that a company does, maybe an after hours event, a cocktail party, a mixer, a mingle event through the Chamber of Commerce or some other thing that you participate in. These could even be church events. I mean, think about it. Every week, your church has an organized event. It's called church. And again, that's for a lot of people a networking moment. We're building relationships there. So think about when you're going to go to one of those things, why am I going? And let that goal dictate who I should be connecting with. So am I going to this event to connect with a particular person or a whole group of people, or am I going to get a particular piece of information or find out about something? So you've got that goal in mind. So who is the person you need to connect with there? And how do you know they're going to be there? Well, maybe you contact them earlier to find out if they're going to be there. Or maybe you look at a guest list or you see online who's registered, those kinds of things. I mean, you can go right now and look out on Handshake and see who all the employers are that are coming to our virtual internship fair Wednesday. Everybody that's participating is listed there. So if you're interested in a particular company being there, you can check that list to see if they're there or not. So even with things like church, but these after hours events, maybe there's sort of a set appropriate attire that you're expecting to participate in and wear the right things. Sometimes they're themed events and you're supposed to wear a particular thing that fits that theme. So you want to fit in. Are you going with someone else or going alone? I would say that if you're new at this, taking a wingman or woman is a great approach. That gives you some security and someone to talk to when you don't feel like you have other people in a moment that you can talk to in a particular event. But think about what you have in common with the other people in the room. That's why you're going. And remember, they're there to network as well. So they're just as eager for you to be there as you are for them to be there. Have an introduction ready. Practice this too with your friends, but practice introducing yourself and talking about either where you go to school, what you're doing for work, the career you're planning on or preparing for, so that you've got a way to start a conversation that leads to a deeper conversation. Not just a hello introduction, but some pieces of information about you that would further that conversation. And make sure you're allowing other people to do that same thing, to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit of their story. We all want to share those pieces of our story. But when you meet people like this, we've got to have a plan for follow-up. And we want to make sure too, I call it the parachute, but that we have an out for when we get in that conversational stranglehold that this person we're talking to, we're no longer interested in continuing this conversation and we don't know how to get out of that. Having a plan for that is really important. Even when you have someone with you, that wingman or woman that can help do that can really be helpful, but it's okay to figure out ways to end conversations, to thank people for their time, their information, for the connection, and then move on to another conversation. And practicing that is important. So when you're at an organized event like that, obviously we want to have a clear goal. We want to be direct and honest with people about who we are. I've gone to events with people where people weren't necessarily honest about what they were there for. I've gone to plenty of events where there were a lot of salespeople present and it wasn't supposed to be a sales event and they were there trying to sell us something. I've gone to things where people sort of portrayed themselves in a way that was not accurate. I went to an event one time, and I know Jessica probably thinks I'm making this up, but I went to an event one time here locally where a person that I knew was there talking with a British accent and pretending that they were British at this event. And I got the biggest kick out of it, but I did not have the guts to blow their cover in front of all these strangers. But they were talking with a British accent, and I could not believe it because I thought, this is absurd. And this person, I don't know why they did this. I don't know why they thought it was a good thing to do, but you want to be authentic when you're at these things. And asking other people to introduce you. So if you go with someone else to an event and they've got a deeper relationship with some of those people, or you're in that moment, get them to introduce you to the people that you want to meet there. Maybe you've had to plan this ahead and let them know, hey, I know Bob's going to be there. I want you to introduce me to Bob. So make sure that you're, checking that off as something you've prepared to do. Sometimes when you go to planned events like this, they introduce everybody in the room. You may have a name tag, or you may get a moment to introduce yourself to the room. I know the Shelby Chamber of Commerce, they do this a lot when you go to their after hours events. If you bring a door prize, you can introduce people or introduce the room. They'll let you speak for a few minutes and tell about why you're there, the company you work for, those kind of things. I've taken students to those and asked employers to hire our seniors that way before. So again, if you've given that opportunity, be ready to use it wisely and follow whatever guidelines they give you. You learn, practice speaking confidently and clearly in those moments and having some professional conversation. This is why we have events here in the university in a normal year. In a non-COVID year, we do some face-to-face networking events on campus and in the local community to give you that practice. We usually do these every spring too for the seniors in the business school to have some targeted time to do that with local employers. And we've seen students be hired out of those events. So look for those opportunities. We obviously advertise the heck out of them, so you can do that. When you're in conversation with people like that, gauge their interest and convey yours. Act interested even when you're not, but if it's time to end that conversation, find a way to do that in a very polite way. Try not to dominate the conversation. Don't be the chatty person that's just talking because you're nervous or just trying to fill that open void of silence that happens in a conversation. Sometimes that might be the clue that you need to move on to a different conversation. Learn to listen for meaningful content when you're talking to people. You're there to network and to glean some opportunity. Find out who has that and listen for those things. Give them opportunities to tell you their story and to share. And then when they ask you for that or give you that opportunity, you be ready to share as well. Keep your emotions in check and your volume in check. And I can tell you from experience, not personally, but just with people there, I've been to events where there's alcohol served and people that are not used to having a certain level of alcohol or maybe not checking themselves, their emotions and their volume tend to go up, and you know what I'm talking about. So you want to make sure that you don't become obvious, or the people that are with you become obvious doing that. It can be very annoying in an event like this or in an environment where this is going on. So be careful about those things. If you're over 21 and you go somewhere and enjoy the refreshments, that's up to you, but be careful about it when you're building those relationships initially. Just to portray yourself in a very professional way. Also, be aware of your body language and the body language of other people. It's easy to convey disinterest with crossed arms, furrowed brow, or you keep looking at your smartwatch. This drives me crazy when I'm in a conversation with somebody and they keep looking at the text popping up on their smartwatch. That is a real turnoff. And if you're dealing with somebody in the professional world who's a bit older than you, they may call you out on it. I actually had somebody here at the university call another employee out on that not too long ago, and it embarrassed the person. But the person was totally giving more attention to their smartwatch than they were to this person who was definitely their senior in the employment world. So we want to be careful about those things. When you follow up with people, follow up with purpose. So it's great to have business cards handy so you can get a connection there, but don't leave it up to the other person to do the follow-up if you are really wanting to take that relationship professionally to the next level. You make sure you got their contact information, their business card, or if nothing else, you look them up on LinkedIn the next day and you send them a quick message talking about how you're glad to meet them and sort of figure out what's the next thing we do in this relationship. What's our next interaction? And how do I plan for that to happen? What am I inviting them into? That sort of thing. You may meet some people that you need to avoid, and they may contact the heck out of you on LinkedIn or send you 1,000 emails about the new product or service they're selling. That happens to me all the time, and it's annoying. And I've got to figure out, how do I stay in a professional tense with this person, but also avoid a lot of contact with them because it is getting annoying. So sometimes you meet people and you go one and done. Don't need another conversation with that person ever. And that's okay, but still be professional about how you convey that. We don't want to ghost people, and we'll talk some more about that in a few minutes, but at the same time, we have to know where our boundaries are. And there's occasionally sometimes some things that happen in those environments that are inappropriate or just annoying. So follow up soon after, within 24 hours usually of an event like that. It's good to send that follow up email, phone call, whatever you decided on with that person that would be that follow up. Now with strategic interactions, so this is a little bit different. We talked about these, and hang on just a second here. I went too fast with my slides. We've been talking about, up to this point, the things you do for an organized event, and those spill over into these next two things we're going to talk about. But we want to make sure that when we're doing strategic interactions, we're meeting with the right person or interacting with the right person directly tied to a specific goal. And what I mean by strategic interaction is like the interviews that I mentioned earlier, where this young man was going to go interview these people that are working in the field that he wants to find information about and learn whether or not that's going to be the right field for him. Now, sometimes we learn that through an internship, but we can't do 1,000 internships, and we can't necessarily get all the information we need out of a field that may have tons of different types of work aspects. So those strategic interactions, you might do this for advice, you might do this for support, you might do this to convey something that you could offer this person. It may be the first step towards asking this person to hire you, or finding out information about a particular career or opportunity that they offer. But think about why that person and how you're going to do that inviting. So it could be that I met a person at an event or through another connection, and I connect with them on LinkedIn and I invite them to coffee. And we have that conversation over coffee or over a Zoom call nowadays. What I'm trying to do in that moment is initially convey the mutual benefit of the conversation. Why? And again, a lot of times the mutual benefit for working professionals is they're looking for opportunities to mentor and invest in people that are younger than them, or that are entry level, or that are new to an industry. And the benefit for them is that feeling of satisfaction that they get to do that. But you always want to be upfront with why you're asking them for that interaction, that meeting, that phone call, whatever that is. So you want to be upfront and clear, and you don't want to bait and switch them. You don't want to show up for one thing and then try to sell them on something else, or be about the thing, be authentic and genuine enough to be about the reason that you're actually meeting for them. So if you're asking them for a job, let them know that up front, but maybe that's not your initial move. Maybe you have another meeting to get to know them first before you go down that road. And when you're doing this kind of stuff, if you're asking for advice or support, or interviewing someone, make sure that they're doing most of the talking. I've met with students before that said they wanted my advice on something, and really what they wanted to do is come in here and tell me what they wanted to do. And that's fine, but if you're asking for advice, make sure you're listening for advice, and taking time to do that well, and then figure out what your follow-up is for that. What's our next step in this relationship? And again, you take the responsibility for making sure that follow-up happens in a strategic interaction like that. And strategic interactions can be so many different things. I mean, it could be the fact that you wanted to meet this person and play a round of tennis just to talk about some things, or have some non-work time together that could lead to professional relationships. Who knows? For impromptu situations, so this is more in line with the things like where we would use an elevator pitch. If you've had Dr. Gather's class, or you're going to take that at some point, you'll do his elevator pitch event, and you develop this 2 to 3 minute little sort of spiel about yourself that it's good to use in impromptu situations, and it's something that you practice and you have ready. But impromptu situations are those things that you're alert to and aware of could happen, but you don't necessarily know if you're going to run into that person today. But when you do think that might happen, you're ready for that. Or when you see that person, there's the person I've been trying to connect with for so long, and we've only connected on LinkedIn. I'm going to go speak to them. They're at an event or in a building where you are, and you've only got just a few minutes to do that. Or maybe it's an impromptu situation and they invite you to lunch based on that initial interaction. Who knows? But you want to be alert to it and ready for it. And sometimes there's organizational awareness and situational awareness that drive this. You want to think about who else is present. Is this the right time? If you go in a particular place and you see that person, but they're already engaged in conversation, you don't run over there and interrupt them to do that. But there's been plenty of times where we've seen that played out, that people do that, and it doesn't go well for them usually. So you want to be strategic about that impromptu situation, just like you would any other interaction. This is a great time too to have your business cards handy, or at least an easy way to make sure that you can follow up with them. Hey, I saw you yesterday in the restaurant. Would love to do lunch with you there again sometime soon. Let's connect, that sort of thing. How about next Tuesday? And you push it to that next level so that you've given them an opportunity to act now, to accept your invitation or to postpone it. Make the follow-up again convenient, you doing that follow-up. So when you have those elevator pitch things ready for your classes like that with Dr. Gathers, use some of that stuff to be ready for when you're going to interact with these people in the professional world, long beyond Gardner Webb, when you have that moment. But also those elevator pitches are really good to use as your intro, that lead in when you're going to a virtual internship fair or a job fair, something like that. Again, you never know for sure who you're going to be interacting with in some of those situations. So again, we want to plan well before this. We got to have that strategy and prepare for it. We want to execute well during each of those type of moments, those situations, and on places like LinkedIn. And we want to follow up well afterwards. And if we don't follow up, we're not going to develop relationships. Relationships are based on the follow-up. They're not connections, they're relationships that we're after here. Your network is a starting point for deeper relationships. So with everybody you meet, so let's say you've had a particular goal that you've met this person and they've started to help you with something, or you've met them and had an interaction. What do you do with it now? Do I need to continue deepening that relationship, or was I meeting with that person purely for them to connect me with someone else? And that's okay. In the networking world, that's not a bad thing. So you've got to take some reflection time, assess those situations. If you go to an after hours event, you meet a bunch of people, who from that event do I need to follow up with and who do I need to not follow up with? So you get to decide those things. And then based on that, you plan your next interactions or your next goals. I mean, you may have gone to an event or connected with somebody and boom, they gave you the internship you wanted. That goal's done. But now what are your next professional goals tied to networking? And how do we keep that momentum moving forward? And following up again is appropriate. It's so important that you take the responsibility to do that, and you don't wait for someone else to do the following up. But then once you follow up, you've got to wait for their response. So don't annoy the heck out of them. Give them a week to do that sort of thing. And it's okay too, when you're in this process, if you feel like you're sort of developing a mentoring relationship with someone who's already ahead of you professionally, ask them for feedback regularly on how this process is working. If somebody's sort of helping you network in the industry, ask them for feedback on how they think you're doing and interacting with these people. So you want to ask yourself, which relationships need maintenance? Who have I not followed up with in a while that I should? How can I benefit them? How can I check in with them to find out how things are going for them? And if there's any help or advice or assistance I can offer, what's the next step for this? And again, you do this in the job world when you follow up after an interview, but think about each relationship and making sure that those few relationships that you're pursuing right now, that you're doing that with enough care to treat them very customized, very specific, and tailoring your interactions to what's needed for your goals and theirs in that moment. And are we at the point where we're beyond email, we're beyond phone, we need to meet physically? Do we have a once a month phone call? Is this somebody who I check in with on LinkedIn every once in a while? You get to dictate this based on what that relationship is producing for you and for them, and that mutual benefit. So we've already talked about some of the opportunities that you can generate yourself. And we talked about LinkedIn, how you need to be out there weekly, if not daily, checking LinkedIn and growing those relationships and using those tools they have to allow you to participate in that two-way street of you looking for opportunities and other people finding you. You don't ghost people. When you meet someone, a cordial response is always a good thing. You can leave it at that if it's not someone you want to continue to develop a relationship with, but don't ghost folks if they're trying to connect with you. You never know who they're connected with, that they might share that information and sort of discredit you, and we want to be careful about that. I can't drive it home enough. You got to participate in all the things we give you opportunities for here at the university, and right now they're all virtual, but we'll go back to doing face-to-face things hopefully this spring. And be able to do those networking events like we usually do with the business school, so that you're available to participate in those and have some neat face-to-face interactions with people. I mentioned clubs and organizations and those kind of things, but don't overlook all the events happening in your community. In a small town like this in Shelby, if you plan to be around here for work or looking for an internship, a lot of times we make those connections through community events and volunteer opportunities, things you're participating in. The Alumni Association at Gardner Webb is also a great thing to be a part of because of that networking that happens there. Gardner Webb alumni hire alumni. It's just so common. And it really makes my job easy because I can help facilitate those relationships with students, and they take it from there. So again, when we have job fairs, when we have employers, when we have people visiting campus, make sure you participate in those things that we advertise. They're usually free to you, and a great way to have some of those next level relationships. So for this to happen, you've got to be intentional. You've got to be committed to making these relationships. No one is going to network for you. They may network a little bit on your behalf. They may invite you into some relationships, but ultimately you've got to drive the bus when it comes to this. You get to decide who you connect with and develop relationships in the professional world. And again, there's tons of opportunities to do this, but you've got to choose to participate. You have to initiate, then develop, and then over time maintain those things. I mean, this is important when you think about references. Long after you've left the university, if you want Jessica Hernan to be a reference for you, you've got to maintain a relationship with her at some level so that she can understand what you're doing now and how she can talk in an educated and an informed way about what you're doing and how that connects back to when she knew you here at Gardner Webb. So again, that maintenance of those relationships falls on you just as much as that initial connection part. So my advice to you to get started is, one, participate in the things we're offering you, but two, get out there on LinkedIn. I know you're doing this for your class right now, and start connecting with me, Shay Mattingly, the university's GW career page on LinkedIn, and then start connecting with all the connections that we open you up to. Find those recruiters who are in your industry and start connecting with them. See if you can do a phone interview about opportunities, learn about internships they offer, connect with people like that for advice. There's a student who's asked me to talk with him later this week about careers in the HR world. And the first thing I'm going to do with her is connect her with people who work in HR so that she can have those conversations with them. Because again, that's who can give her that intel and that information. And I can help her network with those folks. So that is the fire hose approach to networking. What questions do we have?
Do you have any questions, anybody? I think they're good, Micah.
Okay, well, thank y'all. Here's our email address. If you've got questions or want to talk more about any of this or LinkedIn or anything relative to the career world, email us career@gardner-webb.edu. Thank y'all for participating today.
Thank you, Micah, very, very much. And we'll see you in just a few minutes.